Welcome everybody back into NerdSesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we have with us a very special guest, friend of the show, Joel Moran from the Pick a Side pod. We've had Joel on before, of course, but when we had all the other Pick a Side boys on to do trivia, he was on vacation. He couldn't make it. Then we went on his show, the Joel Moran Show, just a couple weeks ago. You guys can go check that out. We talked some NBA. We talked some NFL. Today, we're bringing him on our show, and we're going to be talking football, specifically the AFC East, which is a very interesting division, a very fun division that also includes my Buffalo Bills and, Joel, your New York Jets. So because of that, I'm very interested. Who do you have winning this division?
I got the Jets winning the division.
I figured.
There's no bias involved in this, right, Carson? Just want to let you know that.
No, I know. I get it. I see the case for sure.
But, I'm pretty sure if roles were reversed and the Bills had the Jets roster and the Jets had the Bills roster, you would say the Bills are winning the division. And when I look at the Jets this year, more so than last season, because last season there was a lot of hype and obviously the Aaron Rodgers injury happened. But last season, there were major holes on the roster along the offensive line, and that was always a question mark. I come into this season, and I feel very good about the offensive line. I like Tyron Smith. I like Morgan Moses. Fashanu's going to be a swing tackle if one of those guys go down. I like Elijah Vera-Tucker whenever he's healthy. He's really been good. I like this offensive line a lot, and I think the additions of Mike Williams on offense, or if he's healthy, because it all depends on health, I think the Jets are going to be really good, and this defense is still one of the best defenses in the NFL. I'm just hoping that we get a great version of Aaron Rodgers, and even with me having the Jets winning the division, my optimism on the Jets has not been what it's been in recent years. And the reason for that is because I was traumatized by what happened last year, and I don't want to invest my heart into the ceiling of the Jets all too much. After week 5, if we're 4-1, I'm all in. But I got to see those first couple of weeks first before I reinvest myself into this team again.
I'm pretty high on the Jets, too. I don't have them winning the division. I am going to give that to Carson's Bills. I am the unbiased one here, so you can get my objective opinion. I do like the Jets, though. I have them going 10-7, and they're going to finish second above Miami. The reason that I do like New York, Joel, is, and I know you can speak to this, no team has won more consistently in spite of their quarterback and their offense more than the Jets. That's even more than the lowly Pittsburgh Steelers offense, right? And what I emphasized on your show, Joel, is that like the Steelers, it's not about becoming an elite offense. It's where they're coming from. The Jets in the last 2 seasons, the number 29 scoring offense in back-to-back years. They were number 32 and 31 in red zone offense. I hate to bring up these traumatic memories for you, Joel. And number 32 and number 28 in third down offense. This is enduring 21 games of Zach Wilson. This is enduring 14 games of Flacco, of Mike White, of Trevor Siemian, of Tim Boyle, of Chris Streveler even. Despite that, the Jets have had back-to-back 7-10 campaigns. Like, do you know how hard that is to do? Everybody wants the genius offensive mind nowadays, the Shanahans, the McDaniel, the McVays. You can still win with the foundation of a great defense, and I think that is a testament to the Jets' culture, to Robert Saleh, and to the talent that's on this defense. Last year, they were the number 4 scoring defense, the number 4 passing defense, a top 10 rushing defense, the number 7 red zone defense. They allowed the second fewest first downs in all of football, and they were top 10 in sacks and number 4 in pressure rate. And this defense is returning a lot of talent. The Williams brothers, Jermaine Johnson, C.J. Mosley, Sauce Gardner, D.J. Reed. You got Javon Kinlaw in there. Hassan Reddick reportedly wants out. I think that is emblematic of the Jets' organizational failures. I don't understand why you trade for a guy and don't have a contract ready. But I don't think they need him. He's like a cherry on top, so to speak. This is a stacked and proven defense. So, like you mentioned, you add in Aaron Rodgers. He may not be MVP of the league anymore, but if I can get anything out of him, that is 100% an improvement from where the Jets have been offensively. Again, if Aaron Rodgers can produce just better than being a bottom 3 scoring offense, third down offense, and red zone offense, they're going to be great. So, you add in elite skill talent, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams. I just asked the question, how does this team not win double-digit games? The only question mark I really have is that offensive line. And like you mentioned, Joel, They add in a ton of talent on that. So I just expect a massive improvement offensively. And again, with where they've been, how does this team not win 10 games at least?
Oh, I absolutely expect them to be in double-digit wins. I have them winning 11 games, dude. I'm really high on the Jets, and I think that, Joel, you hit the nail on the head. There was all this excitement about this team as being a Super Bowl contender heading into last year because we knew how special the defense was. We knew how special Garrett Wilson was. We saw so much from Breece Hall in his rookie year, but at the end of the day, it was pairing Aaron Rodgers with that defense. How could it fail? But there were definitely still holes on that team, right? The entire receiving room outside of Garrett Wilson was bad. The offensive line was one of the worst in football. Now it should absolutely be one of the better groups in football. I mean, 3 major upgrades at the tackle spot, which you do need with Tyron Smith because he's going to get hurt at some point. Elijah Vera-Tucker, going to be healthy, as you mentioned. Shout out to him. Went to my rival high school, pancaked my boy Krog probably like 15 times in one game. So I'm going to root for him, and I do think he's a really good player. I don't think that this is an elite offense, but I do think it's an above average to good offense. And I'm cautiously optimistic about Aaron Rodgers. I don't think you can expect a return to MVP form. And even in those 2020, 2021 MVP seasons, that wasn't vintage Aaron Rodgers, right? That wasn't play extension, crazy arm, magician Aaron Rodgers. That was a much more efficient, composed, methodical version of him, not hitting a ton of home runs, executing the offense just perfectly. But he was still doing some moving around. And now he's 40, he's turning 41, he's off a torn Achilles. I still think his brain, his arm, his accuracy will make him a top 10 sort of guy, but not getting back to that MVP level, I would say, with quite a bit of confidence. But I do think some people have discounted him because of the fact that he wasn't great in 2022. I'm just not out on him because of that. He had a down season in 2019, then he won back-to-back MVPs. So I believe in the offense overall. I will say I still don't love the receiving core. Garrett Wilson is a good wide receiver one who hasn't played with an actual NFL quarterback yet. Mike Williams is absolutely an upgrade in that wide receiver 2 spot. It's just the rest of the group. I don't like Gibson as a third target. I hope Malachi Corley is the guy who emerges, who they took in the 3rd this year, who has some real potential to make plays after the catch. I don't know if he is, though. Conklin is fine as a pass-catching tight end. I think that they have a couple of elite players. I think that they have improved across the board. But I still don't view this as one of the league's true upper echelon offenses. However, the defense will be awesome like every year. Logan, you read out they were 4th in points allowed per drive, 2nd in yards allowed per drive. The passing stats they allowed last year: 2,800 yards, 19 touchdowns, 17 picks, 5 net yards per attempt. Every level of the defense is elite. We're talking about multiple all-pro level guys. Then you have studs on top of Sauce and the Williamses with CJ Mosley, Jermaine Johnson. I like adding Chuck Clark at safety. I do think they need to figure out the Reddick situation to reach their defensive potential, because I think if you just lose the pass rush value that Bryce Huff brought, if you don't replace that as you plan to, I do think that takes this defense down just a bit. But if they do figure that out, then it's probably the best defense in the league. So it's not at all that I'm low on the Jets. I think that both the Jets and the Bills are very clearly top 4 teams in the AFC with the Chiefs and the Ravens. I think there is clear Super Bowl potential with this roster, depending on what version of Aaron Rodgers you get. The reason, though, that I slightly prefer the Bills, Joel, you were talking about if you flip these rosters, I would take the Jets to win the division. That is very nearly true. If you flip the rosters overall and I got to keep my quarterback, then absolutely, I would take the Buffalo Bills. If you gave them the other 52 dudes on the roster, yes, the Jets have a more complete football team than the Buffalo Bills. But I think the gap between Allen and Rodgers is large at this point. I think that Josh is really separate from everybody in football other than Patrick Mahomes and his ability to just make offenses elite single-handedly. That to me is the difference. I have a lot more faith in the quarterback position. Because of that, I have a lot more faith in the offense overall. It is close, though. I have these teams winning the same number of games, but when it comes down to that tiebreaker factor, give me Josh, give me that Bills offense.
Josh Allen is spectacular, and there are not many times where I root for division rivals. When I was younger, a lot of the times, the rivalry brewed very strong. I hated the Dolphins. I still hate the Dolphins. I hate the Patriots, but now I'm warming up to them because they started to draft some players I like out of college. Mm-hmm. And with the Bills, I don't hate the Bills because I love Josh Allen, and I was watching a documentary 2.5 years ago, The Four Falls of Buffalo. It was directed by ESPN, and I watched that documentary of them losing 4 straight Super Bowls, and it gave me so much sympathy for you guys that I was like, you know what? I like the Bills now, and I want you guys to reach that type of mountaintop. The unfortunate part with the Jets is, one, Hassan Reddick is screwing us over because before the trade happened, there was reports that, he agreed to play without a new deal. He showed up for the introductory press conference, and he essentially said he's going to play regardless if he has a new deal or not. I like what Matt Judon did with the Falcons, where he said, listen, I haven't earned anything here, and I'm going to try to do it this year. I like that approach because Hassan Reddick, we're not going to trade him like Logan mentioned. We don't really need him. To reach a better version of the defense, we do, but this defense is still going to be great without him. But that situation right there is rubbing me the wrong way. But unfortunately with the Jets, whenever we talk about them, people always expect the worst to happen. And I can't fully blame them for expecting that. But I think that the Jets don't get their just due because people always point to, it's the Jets. It's the Jets. Something's going to go wrong. I don't disagree with your guys' point about Aaron Rodgers entirely because when he was coming to the Jets last year, I was a big Jordan Love believer. I've thought that Jordan Love was going to be great for a long time. And I said, listen, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Jordan Love can lead the Packers to the playoffs if he plays better than Aaron Rodgers did. Because if you look at Aaron Rodgers' numbers, 26-12, it doesn't look that bad. But when you dig into the advanced stats, Aaron Rodgers was pretty terrible for his standards, and he was at most an average quarterback in 2022. So coming off an Achilles, coming into the Jets system and their ecosystem of just quarterback play, offensive infrastructure with Nathaniel Hackett, there is a lot to be questionable about, especially since the history of 40-year-old quarterbacks isn't that great. Outside of Tom Brady, everybody else after 40 has fallen off a complete cliff. So I'm not somebody that's expecting Aaron Rodgers to light the world on fire. I do think that even if he gets hurt, like Tyrod Taylor can win like 2 or 3 games for us because he's that capable. But the Bills, the reason why I like the Bills too, even though I have the Jets winning the division, is because I don't think Sean McDermott gets enough credit for what he's done. Josh Allen is the obvious superstar of the team, but when you look at the team that McDermott took over and those centerpieces they had on defense at the time with Trey White, Poyer, Hyde, Tremaine Edmonds, and how that has transitioned to Rasul, Teron Johnson, Christian Benford now he broke out last year. The defensive line is really solid. Terrell Bernard played really well in his limited time after Matt Milano went down last year. What he's been able to do with this defense to consistently be a top 10 unit. I know that last year there was chatter about him being fired and let go, but this guy has been able to get consistent great output from his defensive personnel despite a plethora of injuries, and I feel like we have to mention that whenever talking about the Bills because their defense is always going to be one of the better units in the league.
I mean, that's the benefit of having a defensive-minded coach, and yeah, I would give him credit for that. I think he handcuffs this team sometimes offensively, and then I don't know if I can ever forgive Sean McDermott for the play call that he had last year in the playoff game. I don't know if that was his call or the OC giving the rock to DeMar Hamlin and going for it there and not putting Josh Allen on the field. I think that is honestly, I think that is a fireable offense, but it's weird. It's inverse, right? When Josh came onto the scene, this was one of the best defenses in all of the National Football League, and that's how they won their games. And then you get this dramatic flip over the past couple of years where the old guard is on their way out, and now Josh is leading them to all the wins. But they have been successful. It blew my mind last year after all those injuries. I mean, we're sitting there week 5, and I remember me and Carson hitting the panic button a little bit, talking about, is this team going to bottom out? That shows a lot of heart, man, to fight back like that with all those injuries. It's hard. It's hard to do, man. It's one of the toughest things in football. And another team in this division suffered a lot of injuries last year, Miami. I want to touch on, before I hand it over to you, Carson, I want to touch on that point you made about Rodgers. It is interesting, right? Like if Rodgers would be defying a lot of traditional QB norms. All the greats, like you were talking about, Peyton had one of the biggest fall-offs we've ever seen from, it was quick too, dude. You blinked and it was, I can control the entirety of the game to my arm is gone and I'm the worst quarterback in the league. Breeze went from MVP level QB to my arm is shot. I can't throw the ball more than 10 yards. Brady's the only dude to ever defy it. And even in that last season in Tampa Bay, it was like, wow, man, his arm's going down. With quarterbacks, you never know when that season is going to hit. And I don't think it's going to be this year, I hope. But Rodgers' ability really isn't my big question mark. For me, Joel, it's that damn turf y'all play on. I've talked about this a lot, dude. I hate that they put those guys out there on that turf because it's claimed so many great players, and that's really not my concern. I'm confident in Rodgers' brain. I'm confident in his arm. I'm just more concerned at playing all those games there that it takes one bad step, man. You saw it. It was 4 snaps in. That's really my concern. It's just him staying healthy because if it is, I mean, and here, I'll let you take over, Carson. I do want to ask you a follow-up just like to both of y'all. Do y'all think that if Saleh and this team underachieves, say they go 8-9, they miss the playoffs, do you think he's on the hot seat this year? Do you think that he could get canned after this year? I know a lot of people don't like him. I'm a big fan of Saleh. Maybe I just like bald, defensive-minded coaches, but I think he's overachieved.
Totally.
If he falters, do you think that he could get fired at the end of this year?
If they go 8-9, that would be disappointing, but I don't think he's done anything to put himself on the warm seat. I mean, he has won, as you say, 7 games in back-to-back years with the worst quarterback we have seen in the NFL in a long time, the worst quarterback play overall, like legitimately abysmal, no comparison around the league. So, of course, they're stacked with defensive talent, but I do believe in the culture that he's built. I do believe he has maximized that great defensive talent. I could definitely see the case for, all right, well, we want an offensive-minded guy, because when you're talking about the fall-off that we see from these quarterbacks, I can't see Rodgers being worse than like a 2020 Drew Brees when he's 39, 40 years old, who was still a very efficient, very productive regular season quarterback who just had clear limitations because his arm was shot. I think Rodgers is too smart. I think his arm is still going to be better than that. I think he's too accurate. But the one advantage that a Brees did have over him is more overwhelming offensive skill, I would say, and a great offensive mind in Sean Payton. But Aaron Rodgers wanted Nathaniel Hackett. Like, that's his dude offensively. So if that isn't the guy, I don't think that's a Saleh issue. I think that that's an Aaron Rodgers issue. So I would be very surprised. I would be upset unless things dramatically change this year if people are pointing at Saleh and saying he's the problem.
I was thinking about a hypothetical yesterday. What if the Chargers hired Robert Saleh instead of Staley? And I was like, wow, I think that he turns around the defense. Herbert maintains the offensive production. I'm like, wow, the Chargers would be like really damn good, like contender type status, I think, just based off what he's been able to do with the Jets thus far. I think Robert Saleh gets shit on a lot, but ultimately, it's hard to win if you have terrible quarterback play, and we had the worst quarterback play in football, and we've been able to win 7 games in back-to-back seasons. And the Jets, the year before 2022 we were one of the worst defenses in football. And Robert Saleh instantly came in, and he turned it around.
Dead last in scoring defense that year.
Yeah. Robert Saleh had such a massive turnaround, and I don't think the offense is so much to like. We can't put the blame on him. The Nathaniel Hackett point that you mentioned, it also bothers me a little bit that there's nobody that is going to put their foot down when it comes to Aaron Rodgers ad-libbing, and that concerns me a little bit. We seen what Matt LaFleur was able to do when he had a quarterback that listened and was willing to play within the confines of the system. And Aaron Rodgers, much like Russell Wilson, not to the same degree, but Russell Wilson in Seattle, his entire career, he didn't target the middle of the field. These last couple of seasons from Aaron Rodgers, even MVP level seasons, he avoids the middle of the field to avoid turning the ball over because that is the most congested portion of the defense. And he's really throwing to the sidelines. And it's not that he can't throw to the middle field. He just doesn't like routes going in that direction. And I think that's something that can limit the offensive ceiling of this team. And it doesn't get talked about with Aaron Rodgers, but it could be a detriment to this offense.
All right, so Joel, do you have an official record prediction for the Jets? You have them winning the division.
Yeah, I was gonna go with 15 and 2, but I think, that's too out of the
It's ambitious.
Yes, I think it's too unrealistic. The Jets have a very easy schedule this year. Because of that, I have them at 11-6 or 12-5. It's one of those records. This team is so talented, it could be the number one team in the AFC. Like, I think it has that sort of potential. And with our schedule, there's a lot of favorable games. We're facing a lot of bottom dweller teams. So when we talk about like the Jets versus Bills in that aspect, I think a big reason why I have the Jets winning the division is not because they're just overwhelmingly better. It's more so just how the chips fall. Because when you look and you dive into the Bills' schedule, they face a ton of playoff teams. And, I mean, they can win all of those because they're the Bills. But they can also lose those. Those are 50-50 games, and the Jets have less of those 50-50 games in their schedule.
That's a fair point. Still, everybody in this division has to play each other, first of all, obviously, and there's 3 very good teams in this division. And everybody has to play the NFC West, which I would say has 3 pretty darn good teams. And everybody's got to play the Texans. The AFC South's definitely stronger than it has been. So I agree the Bills' schedule is tougher, but I don't know that the Jets' schedule is really a walk in the park, man. It's a little easier, but I think there's still a lot of pretty tough games there. Been hungry for some college football? Well, we finally get a taste this weekend. Don't miss any of the action. Jump in at DraftKings Sportsbook.
It's a small but mighty slate of games for Week 0, including a big matchup in Ireland. This is going to be DraftKings' biggest college football season to date. Enjoy the ride now all the way through the expanded playoffs. Plus, all newbies getting into the college spirit, here's something extra special. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly.
Score big with DraftKings all college football season long. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, let's move on to the Bills, Logan. You have them winning the division. Why is that?
Yeah, I have them going 12-5, and a lot of people are expecting the sky to fall in Buffalo, and I don't blame them for expecting that. They lost a lot of the old guard. Stefon Diggs is out. Trey White is out. Jordan Poyer is out. Micah Hyde is not out. I'm not expecting the sky to fall. Not only do I think that it's not falling, I think the Bills are going to be better despite those losses. Now, I do want to add a little bit of an asterisk here. Matt Milano's injury is really big. Tore his biceps, likely out until at least December. He's one of the best linebackers in football. Bernard stepped up in his absence and played really well last season. Just replacing an all-pro linebacker is just a really tall task. But the reason that I expect the Bills to be atop of this division is they have Superman. Basically, I have the Bills winning 12 games almost solely because of my belief in Josh Allen. We sing his praises a lot here, so bear with me if you heard some of this spiel before. He's as good of a one-man offense as there has ever been in NFL history. Over the past 4 seasons, since Josh really broke on, became the Josh Allen that we know and love today, he's number 1 in total passing and rushing TDs over the last 4 seasons. That's 22 more than Patrick Mahomes. He's number 2 in total passing and rushing yards over the last 4 seasons. That's second to only Mahomes. Number 2 in rushing yards by a quarterback over the last 4 seasons, second to Lamar Jackson. He has produced a top 10 scoring offense every season the last 4 years. That includes 2 number 2 offenses and 1 number 3 offense. And he has produced a top 3 third down offense every season the last 4 years. 3 of those have been the number 1 third down offense in football. And as for the losses, I think with Diggs, I think they're well equipped to replace Diggs' value. I think he's slightly overrated at this part in his career. The final 8 games of the regular season, he was under 5 catches per game. He was at 44 receiving yards per game, and he had 1 TD. And obviously, in the biggest moment of their season, he dropped the biggest pass of the year. And so I don't think Diggs is washed. Please don't put those words in my mouth, but I don't think he is what he once was, and so I think that can get overblown. Also, I thought Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir did a phenomenal job down the stretch of picking up the slack. Along with that, you have the best running game that Josh has ever had with James Cook in the backfield, and he's one hell of a receiving back too. On the defensive losses, I think you're sleeping if they're going to fall off a cliff. Like we're talking about with these defensive-minded coaches, like you just mentioned, Joel, Sean McDermott has this defense ready to go every year. You know, you can have your criticisms about clock management, game management, decision-making, play calling. You can have those issues with McDermott.
9/11 comparisons.
Among other things, yeah. I think you're tripping if you think they're going to fall off a cliff. Ed Oliver's back. I love Greg Rousseau and Epinesa. I think they've developed over the last couple years. I love Bernard in the middle of the field. In the secondary, I trust Rasul Douglas. I trust Teron Johnson. And I really like Taylor Rapp. So my only concerns, this is going to be an elite offense because of Josh Allen. He wears a 1-7 on his chest. That's Superman. The defense is going to be good to great. My only concern is DeMar Hamlin at the starting safety spot. This is a guy who couldn't get on the field last year.
Yeah.
You're telling me he's going to hold down a starting job? I'm rooting for the boy. I hope he's healthy. I hope he's available. To me, him starting is just, you're jumping the shark. Those are really big expectations to put on him. My other concern is wide receiver 2. As I mentioned, I like Kincaid. I like Shakir. Those guys are solid. So maybe receiver 3. I'm just going off position. Mm-hmm. I like Keon Coleman in his preseason games. The one thing that scares me about Coleman, especially what I saw in the Steeler game, he breaks up when he's about to get hit. I think there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment to the physicality in the NFL. He just looks a little bit scared, and I think it's going to come with time. I'm confident in his ability. I think it's more the mental part of the game. Like, there were a couple times in the Steeler game where he was about to get lit up, and he kind of broke and didn't catch a pass. And then the offensive line. But to me, all of those are like really minor tertiary concerns where they're in the periphery, right? They're not major concerns that are going to really limit this team from winning football games. And in a lot of ways, last year, we're talking about games that they lost. A lot of that's them shooting themselves in the foot. Like, as long as the Bills don't shoot themselves in the foot, they should be fine. Josh Allen is the biggest reason by far, though, that I'm expecting this team to win this division. And I think they're going to beat a lot of those great teams on the schedule that you're talking about, Joel. I think the Bills are going to be, for me, number 3 in the AFC. And they're probably fighting with the Bills between that 3 and 4 spot. I'd go Baltimore, I'd go Buffalo. I'd go Baltimore, I'd go Kansas City, and then I'd go Buffalo in that order. So, yeah, I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a battle. Those head-to-head matchups between New York and Buffalo could very well decide the division. But I'm going to take the Bills to go 12-5 and to win the East.
We saw last year what losing good starting caliber safeties does to a defense with the Bengals. Even with the cornerback play still being somewhat decent, you just allow so many leaks on the back end with communication issues. And I think the Bills not having a reliable safety option to turn to this season could be a bit problematic. Because of Sean McDermott's scheme and how he runs his defense, they are a safer defense than other ones. He doesn't take as much risk, so that's probably not as big of a concern. I just don't think this roster from top to bottom is constructed all that well. I think the offensive line has some good pieces. I like Deion Dawkins a lot, but in 3rd and long situations, the Bills' offensive line allowed pressure before 2.5 seconds or less at the highest rate in the NFL, above 40%. And this offensive line, in those situations, that is an issue. The offensive line holding up for Josh Allen. Josh Allen almost never gets sacked, and he masks a lot of those issues, much like Patrick Mahomes does with Kansas City. I'm just interested to see this shift. I don't think Stefon Diggs is the same guy he once was, and I think juxtaposed to the NBA, where NBA players, NBA fans, they don't respect former all-time greats or legends at all. I think with the NFL, name value is 100%. A disease within the NFL community. Stefon Diggs is still like top 6 to a lot of people. And I'm like, no, Nico Collins is better than him right now with Houston. And I think name value is just a terrible thing in the NFL because it's a very year-to-year league. Every year guys jump and they take leaps, and sometimes somebody, instead of saying, Brandon Ayuk is an elite guy, oh no, Devontae Adams is still better because that name value still holds a lot of weight. But when I look at the Bills, I really want to see what Joe Brady does with this offense in a full offseason. I'm not going to say I'm the highest on Joe Brady. I know that the results from an eye test perspective looked better when he was calling plays. All the analytics and stats point to Ken Dorsey's offenses being better. The one thing that Joe Brady did do is that he ran the ball much more. And with play action, the Bills' success rate with play action was 52%. Without play action was 47%. But here's the thing. They only use play action on 29% of early downs, which was 20th in the NFL. That's something that can improve. But Ken Dorsey used play action 32% of the time on early downs versus Joe Brady 24% of the time. So all the analytics point to, like, Ken Dorsey was pressing the right buttons. It just came at a point in the season where the Bills shot themselves in the foot with games they lost by defensive collapses or other things. And, Ken Dorsey lost his job. But Joe Brady, I still very much am kind of questioning just how good he is, what type of style of offense this team is going to run. I do think it's going to be a lot of 12 personnel with Kincaid and Dawson Knox out there because that's the most efficient form of offense they're able to generate. I don't think it's going to be a ton of 11 personnel. I think it's going to be more of a balance. But the Bills, they faced the number one schedule of toughest offenses, and they also faced the number one schedule of toughest defenses. So this young defense is going to get tested by some elite-level offenses, and this offense that now lacks Stefon Diggs is going to face these elite defenses. But like I mentioned earlier, like, Stefon Diggs is not that big of a loss to me. Josh Allen had 246 dropbacks without Stefon Diggs, and in those dropbacks, his EPA would have ranked second in the NFL. So even without Stefon Diggs, Josh Allen was still elite. And I'm not worried about him. I'm just worried about the opponents they're going to face because this is very much a rebuild transition year for the Bills. But because they have Josh Allen and some other good pieces in place still, they're able to compete at a high level.
Yeah, Joel, I'm worried about what they're going to do to those teams, man.
Amen, brother. Teams. I mean, listen. It's always a retool around Josh. It's never a rebuild. You are always going to be in the playoffs, whether you like it or not, man. He's just too good. So there's a lot to dive into because I have a ton of thoughts on the Bills. I'll try to keep this under a half-hour monologue. The offensive coordinator point. I'm not in love with Joe Brady. I don't necessarily think Joe Brady is a needle mover. I would love to have a more inventive offensive coach, and frankly, I would love to have that guy as the head coach, and I'll talk about the McDermott front of that as well. But he's better than Ken Dorsey. And I understand that the numbers were still excellent under Dorsey. That is a 100% Josh Allen product. Under Dorsey, we had probably the least balanced and the least creative offense in the NFL. Before Joe Brady, we simply did not utilize a player who is clearly one of the best running backs in football. Before Joe Brady, Josh Allen was not directed to throw the football to anybody other than Stefon Diggs. We were so overly reliant on a wide receiver one who had regressed. And all of these guys who actually were sort of diamonds in the rough, Shakir, Kincaid, who was playing as one of the best tight ends in football down the stretch, they weren't being utilized early in the year. We had one of the lowest motion rates in the NFL, which, again, is not inherently a good thing, but you just think about the sort of chaos you can cause a defense by using motion creatively, especially last year. We saw that more than ever with McDaniel and the Dolphins. Dorsey brought none of that to the table. So Brady isn't an innovator. He's not some genius. He's just not fucking things up anymore. And Dorsey was fucking things up. And I understand the offensive numbers were still great, and he wouldn't have gotten fired if the Bills didn't have 12 men on the field against the Denver Broncos, which does not have to do with him, but that was the right decision. I believe that. I also think the McDermott conversation is an interesting one, Joel. You talk about him not getting enough credit for manufacturing good defense after good defense, even doing so in a major transitional year last season with so many injuries. Daquan Jones missing a vast majority of the year. Matt Milano missing a vast majority of the year. Micah Hyde getting hurt. Trey White missing a vast majority of the year. I do think he deserves credit for that. I also think Brandon Beane deserves more credit because the fact that this young defensive line is now great, it's not a shocking reality. Like, it took a little time for some of these guys to get going, but Rousseau, Epinesa, Oliver, like, the Bills consistently invested in that position group. That is paying off. Taylor Rapp, great free agency signing. Taron Johnson has been a dude for the Bills. He just got to play more last year, and he played the best that he has. Well, he's really been on the field 90% of snaps the last couple years, but he excelled last year. So I think it's a combination of yes, McDermott coaching well, but more so investing in the right positions, finding the diamonds in the rough. And I do just have so many frustrations with McDermott when it comes to a lot of the stuff Logan mentioned. The game management, I think, can be disastrous. Although I do believe he is a good defensive coach in playoff settings, his soft-ass, conservative-ass zones get picked apart, and the Bills' defense has never been as effective in the playoffs as it has in the regular season because of that. And I'm just concerned by the stuff that we heard last year. I thought that McDermott overhauled a broken culture, and he deserves credit for that. But then we're hearing last year that he doesn't take responsibility for the 13 seconds meltdown. He doesn't take responsibility for anything. He is literally telling the Bills to utilize the 9/11 terrorists, the hijackers, as motivation for how to work together as a team. Then I'm just like, okay, thanks, Sean. Thank you for saving us from the drought. I think we can move on. I think that there are coaches out there who can be more additive at this point. And I do look at a great offensive mind in that role. But we're not going to see that change at this point. I don't know when we will. I don't know when the Bills will bottom out enough where you can say, okay, it's on the coach. Probably it's going to have to be after an 11-game season, and it's going to be a playoff letdown, and you're just going to have to say, okay, Sean, we have to change things up. We can't keep running this back forever. But I do have a lot of confidence in the Bills. And this offense is just going to be top 5, no matter what. This is what happens every single year. Logan, you mentioned number 2, number 3, number 2, number 6. Those are the scoring offenses that the Bills have generated with Josh Allen since 2020. That's with average line play. That's with poor running games before last year. That's with receiving cores that have had some holes in there. You mentioned unequivocally the best third down offense in football year after year. The Bills are the number 1 scoring offense overall over that span at 28.6 points per game. Josh, in the last 4 years, has averaged over 5,000 total yards and over 43 touchdowns per season. I just want everybody to let that sink in. That is the sort of all-time transformative dude that he is, and I'm not worried about the changeover. I think you guys are both right about Diggs. Here was the production in the receiver room over the last 12 games of last season, including the playoffs. Khalil Shakir was the leading receiver with 611 yards, 3 touchdowns. Dalton Kincaid was number 2. With 584 yards, 3 touchdowns. Diggs was the number 3 receiver in terms of productivity with just 578 yards, 2 touchdowns. And don't even talk to me about Gabe Davis. Luckily, neither of you guys did, but I know other people out there will. In those 12 games, he had 5 games without a catch. He has no hands, have an ass, can go elsewhere. I'm happy to see him gone. I think Shakir is awesome. He is fast. He has a knack for getting open. I'm optimistic about Keon Coleman. I think there will be a learning curve there. I think there might be some frustration with technique, with hands, especially when he's adjusting to balls that are thrown low. But he's big, he's strong, he's explosive. His contested catching is ridiculous. And by all accounts, he's a great guy. I'm trying not to get too charmed by that because he's a hell of a quote. That doesn't necessarily matter on the football field. But I think when he's basically expected to be the 3rd target in this offense, he's a sort of athlete that Josh hasn't had to throw to in his entire time with the Bills. And I think Curtis Samuel is a legit number 3, and Kincaid could easily be a 1,000-yard receiver. That's how he was playing down the home stretch of last year. So I actually think it's the most complete receiving core that Josh has had since 2020 when you had John Brown, you had Cole Beasley, and you had Diggs. And also the offense is free of Ken Dorsey for a full year, which is a clear positive. And they have the best running back of the Allen era by far, and they are now fully aware of that. So I think the offense is going to be elite, absolutely. Defensively, again, people look at the name brand losses. I just don't care. I think it's a real positive that they realized they didn't need some of these older, regressing, injury-prone players. I loved Trey White. I loved Micah Hyde. I loved Jordan Poyer. All of these guys, they were not the players that they used to be. They were not available enough for the most part. And you just had to reset this defense at some point. You cannot continue to rely on these dudes in their 30s who have all these issues as the backbone of your defense. And the Bills realized last year that they already had the guys to make that transition. They still produced the number 4 scoring defense, the number 10 defense in terms of yards per drive. So we've mentioned all the dudes, Rapp, Bernard, Benford, Taron Johnson's a monster. And they added Rasul Douglas. That's another Brandon Beane move, by the way. I thought that was a fantastic decision to go out there, get him. Should be one of the best corner groups in football. And I love the front. They were 6th in pressure rate last year. Leonard Floyd is a tough loss, but we mentioned all the dudes trending upwards. Rousseau, Epinesa, Oliver, Daquan Jones was great last year. He'll be healthier. And the whole unit is just progressing in the right direction. So everything was looking great for this team, in my opinion, even though there was this sort of panic in terms of mainstream NFL discourse because of the names that they shed, none of which I was losing sleep over, until Matt Milano tore his biceps. That does matter a lot. He's easily the Bills' best defensive player, and this is his second straight year with a major injury, which is concerning for the scope of his career. Now, they're two entirely separate injuries, but it's still not a good thing to have that happen in back-to-back seasons in such a physical sport where lifespans can be so short in the NFL. And I worry about Dorian Williams starting in his place. He can hit, he can move, but he does not come close to Milano's coverage abilities. He does not come close to his IQ, his instincts. I mean, that's what makes Milano so special. He's ahead of every play. I like the Nicholas Morrow signing, so I think the linebacking core is still solid, but it definitely loses a lot with Milano out, and he needs to be back by the playoffs. And as you guys both mentioned, I am deeply worried about the notion that Damar Hamlin might be the starting free safety for this team. That cannot happen, in my opinion. This is why you drafted Cole Bishop in the second round. I think Cam Lewis has been better when we've seen him on the field, a good bit better. Mike Edwards, who they brought in this offseason, has at least been a mediocre starter at the position. Damar Hamlin is an incredibly inspiring story. It is remarkable that that man is able to play NFL football again, and I'm so happy for him. He has shown nothing to indicate that he should be a starting NFL free safety. In fact, I think out of all the guys I just named, he should be the fourth option. So I don't know what's going on there. I mean, there's a couple injuries in the room that could maybe make him just the week one starter, but it's concerning. And with the weird stuff last year with the fake punt going to Damar, I'm just like, do they feel some obligation to try to give him his moments? Because God, I hope not. And I don't want to diminish Damar and act like he's some charity case, because he shouldn't be. It's incredible that he's out there, but why are we talking about him as the starting free safety? That should not be a conversation.
No, yeah, and when you get into a fourth down situation, the element of surprise, I guess, is the excuse for going for it with Damar Hamlin, but you got to go with Josh Allen in a fourth down situation.
Best short yardage, best situational third down quarterback in football. I put the ball in his hands.
And, the Bills wide receiver core, they complement each other so well. Gabe Davis, it's funny that you're slandering him like that. I like Gabe Davis a lot. He plays well in big games. You know how that goes.
one time he did.
But Gabe Davis was a 4-5 guy running vertical routes only. He really wasn't putting pressure on defenses, and his speed doesn't scare defenses. Now with Keon Coleman, he's raw, but he's an exceptional athlete. He at least puts fear in defenses because he's so fast and explosive. And I think Shakir playing in the slot and then Curtis Samuel playing as a flanker, that is a complete wide receiver core. They might not be at the top of the line of, where they rank amongst wide receivers, but it's a very complete unit. And Dalton Kincaid, I'm a big fan of him and what he can do in multiple different spots. I feel like we're heading toward a timeline, and these timelines are they're running into each other, where the Bills this year could very well make the playoffs, win the division, do what they've been doing the last couple of years, or they could lose the division and they could maybe come a game short or lose a tiebreaker, and that cost Sean McDermott his job. And then you look over there, New York, Brian Dable, his job could be lost because the quarterback that's starting for him is terrible, and the blame gets put on Dable for Jones being such a terrible quarterback. And it could lead directly into Brian Dable finally getting the head coaching job of the Buffalo Bills, which I think from just based on Allen and Dable's relationship and Dable being a really great offensive mind, that can be the perfect marriage. And it feels like we're running into that timeline somewhat. Things have to go wrong on both ends for that to happen, though.
Oh, I think the expectations I think things have to go normal in New York for that to happen. They put Brian Dable, they put him in a corner. They said, go save Daniel Jones. Go make him a good quarterback. A lame duck's a lame duck, man. There's no saving that kid. I kind of like that. I like that for both sides. And honestly, Joel, I don't think things have to be that drastic for Buffalo to let go of Sean McDermott. I think if you get to the playoffs and you lose in the first round, I think that's justifiable enough to let him
That's
go. I
the
think
rational approach. I don't think
Well,
that's how the
I'm
Pagulas, I don't
gonna
think that's
keep
how
it.
the Bills view it. They
Well,
extended
they
him.
just gave him an extension after
Yeah.
exactly. They just gave him an extension after last year. Personally, I would have shit canned McDermott after that call on 4th down. To me, that was a fireable enough offense. Like, what are we doing, bro? I don't care if it's a cool story. If you get the first down and it's going to energize the team, what gives you the highest statistical probability of getting that first down in that situation? It's the second best quarterback in football. It's the best third down QB in football. Duh. Let's put that guy on the field. So I'd be okay with letting him go if it's another loss similar to that. Or like, you know what? I mean, damn, dude, that's a lot of. And I don't know if it should be on Leslie Frazier or if it should be on McDermott for that game, but it's a lot of playoff moments like that, like 13 seconds, like that one call. It's like, when is enough enough? And I think that would be mutually beneficial, man. I think Dable was the best offensive mind to come through that system. I think not only can he complement Josh, I think he can make him maybe even better with some of his stuff. I really like that idea, man. I just don't know if Buffalo's going to be right to pull the trigger. It's like Pittsburgh, man. It's like, when is, and I'm not a guy who wants Mike Tomlin gone, but it's the fan base is going, when is enough enough?
You know, I wanted to ask you guys this question about the Bills. They lost a lot of pieces. From their play on the field, I don't think it's that huge of a loss. I agree with you, Carson. I don't think it is. But this team last year was all over the place. It was a mess. And the players they lost were locker room leaders. Do you not think there's like an emotional aspect of this team to where, like, if things are going haywire, those leaders kind of were a stable foundation for the team to kind of keep on going, versus now you're counting on none of those guys really to have that presence? Like, nobody right now currently in the locker room has that sort of veteran presence outside of a couple guys, but they weren't there from the very beginning. You know, when you lose Trey White, Poyer, Micah Hyde, like foundational pieces to the defense and to the roster as a whole, like, I think there is some sort of factor emotionally there where it's like, okay, who are we leaning on when we're in a rut? Who are we looking to when we're in a rut? And somebody on the Bills has to now take that approach and take that job on the chin.
I can see that point. Here's the thing. To me, Stefon Diggs was the most toxic aspect of the entire Bills locker room dynamic last year.
Definitely.
And they still have Josh Allen. And I think Josh is a tier 1 leader in football. And there are dudes, right? Deion Dawkins, I think, is an awesome vocal leader. Like, I'm with you on the defensive side of the ball. Micah and Poyer, they have been that rock. But I think there's a lot of talent in that group. I think Taron Johnson can step up as a leader. And I'm not too concerned about it overall.
Yeah, and I can't speak to it because obviously I'm not in there. But I think, for me, if I was a player in that locker room, knowing that I have Josh Allen on my team instills confidence and faith in me that we can win any individual football game. And so I think it's a good point. I mean, it is a lot of turnover in one offseason, but if I was playing for that team, I would feel like we got a puncher's chance against anybody in the league with Josh under the helm.
Yeah. Here's the last thing that I'll say about my Bills record prediction, because I have them going 11-6. I said on your show, Joel, I was going to have them better than last year, winning 12. Only reason I've changed that is the Milano injury, because I think that matters for the regular season.
It does.
But for all the reasons that we've laid out, right? The killer injuries last year, the departures being overrated. I think expecting them to regress is a bit silly, especially to the extent that some people expect them to. And as much as anything, it's just the fact that they were like a ridiculously good 11-win team last year. You think about how they lost their games. It was having too many men on the field versus Denver. It was that freak loss against the Jets with the punt return touchdown. It was a game to the Eagles in which they had more than 500 yards. They didn't turn the ball over once. They converted some ridiculous number of third downs, like 13. Nobody in NFL history had lost when hitting all of those marks. And it was a combination of missed field goals, James Cook dropping a walk-in touchdown, bad penalties, and the defense not being able to get stops. And that's another thing. The defense overall held it together, even with key losses. There were a couple bad moments, though. The Eagles game, the Pats game, allowing them to march downfield with Mac Jones. I think there was a minute 15 seconds on the clock or something like that. They got a touchdown to end that game. that's where I just look at the losses and I'm like, all of them are so weird. They don't feel to me at all like they'd be replicated. Whereas the wins, it's like, oh yeah, the Bills played elite football because they're an elite football team, and point differential year after year, scoring offense, scoring defense. All of these things indicate to us that they're an elite football team, better than even an 11-win team. That's why picking them to win 11 this year, even with the Milano injury, even with the schedule, feels appropriate because that's what they do every single year. They're going to be between 11 and 13 every year.
The Bills have two modes. They are either blowing you out or they're losing a close game. That's how the Bills operate.
Yeah, but last year was kind of a nasty version of it because we've seen them win a lot of close games before last year. Last year was just like somehow everything, special teams, defense was always just off the rails.
Don't remind me, man. That Eagles game, I was rooting against the Eagles so hard.
Yeah.
When the Eagles came back and won, I was just so annoyed.
That was peak voodoo magic Eagles where they just won every game somehow, by one score and until they finally started losing every game.
Because I think over the past 2 seasons, there's been no quarterback that has benefited more from winning bias than Jalen Hurts. But that's a conversation for another day, honestly.
What about Joel? Tua Tagovailoa. Let's talk about the Miami Dolphins. We've talked about Tua before, the three of us. We're all somewhere in the same range of not being the biggest fan of his. What do you expect from Miami this year?
I expect what happens every year to happen to them again. If you look at their schedule, the back half of their season is very, very difficult. Their first 4 games, the beginning is pretty tough. They face Jacksonville, Buffalo, they're at Seattle, and they face Tennessee. Tennessee's probably an easy game, but I think they've made some improvements to where, they're kind of gritty. Look at their last 6 games. At Green Bay, versus the Jets, at Houston, versus the Niners, at Cleveland, at the Jets. I mean, these are elite defense after elite defenses. You're on the road for half of these games. They can lose all 6 of these games. And, the first 10, 11 weeks of the season, 12 weeks of the season, they'll be 8-3 or somewhere around there. But then they get into this tough stretch and they're going to lose these games. And that's just what happens. And at some point, it's not a coincidence anymore. At some point, we have to stop making excuses for the quarterback that plays for them. And he just got paid, and good for him that he just got paid a lot of money, generational wealth. It's going to change his family forever. But just talking about him as a football player, I don't think Tua is a franchise quarterback. And I think whenever the Dolphins play marquee games, the reactions from Dolphins fans tell you everything. They are so confident going into these matchups. They lose because their quarterback is unable to perform when things aren't manufactured for him at a high level. And then a lot of the fans for the Dolphins turn sour on him. But then they have an off season to think about it. They have a lot of naps and rests, and they sleep for a long time, and they look at Tua highlights against terrible teams, and they talk themselves into believing into him once again. The Dolphins are 17-4 against non-playoff teams in the last 2 seasons, averaging 30 points and 276 passing yards per game. Against playoff teams over the last 2 seasons, they are 3-12, averaging 20 points and 240 passing yards per season. I don't know how, for the life of anybody, you can count on this team when last year they had the AFC East on lock. All they had to do was beat a terrible Tennessee Titans team, and it clinched them the division. Tua in that game was very mediocre, if not, you can say bad. I know they had offensive line injuries, but you look at how the Titans comeback happened. The Titans scored a touchdown. The Dolphins had a chance to get a first down and ice the game. They go 3 and out. The Titans get the ball back. They score. Then Tua, with 1:40 left, has a chance to rally the Dolphins with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle on the field, by the way. It's 4th and 2, and he gets sacked, and that's the end of the game. All you needed was a field goal. You only needed to get in field goal range with almost 2 minutes left in the game. He's not a franchise quarterback. And I know people are going to keep trying to talk themselves into Tua, and this Brian Flores dilemma has a lot of people feeling bad for Tua. I'm in the minority. I think a lot of NFL coaches are hard asses like Brian Flores. They coach hard like Brian Flores. And was it the best thing for him from a human aspect? No, but I think if a lot of the things that happen within coaching circles and how they coach players was revealed to the public, we think a lot of these guys are bad as well. I just think this is the culture of how coaching works in the NFL. But ultimately, the Dolphins' biggest question mark is their quarterback when it comes to these big-time games. You can point to other things, the defense, the offensive line. It all comes back to the quarterback, and when you need a play, he doesn't deliver.
I agree with a lot of what you said, Joel. I know we are all not big fans of Tua. I want to start with the Flores thing real quick because I know that's been trending. Mm-hmm. I think some guys just respond well to that coaching and some guys don't. And yeah. I don't know who to put that on because obviously we didn't see that directly. Me, if I fuck up, I'd like you to get on me. I want you to tell me what I did wrong. I don't want you to coddle me. Tua does not seem like he responds well to that, and he needs a lot of stuff manufactured to him.
Here's what I'll say.
I don't think Mike. Sorry, Carson, but
go ahead.
I don't think Mike McDaniel, whenever Tua has played bad, maybe I missed it. I don't think Mike McDaniel has ever held him accountable. Jared Goff's first year in Detroit, Dan Campbell said straight up, he's not playing well. He's playing like garbage, and we need him to play better. Tua, if that was Tua would have thought Dan Campbell was the worst human being on earth, and he's calling me terrible. Some guys respond great to it, like you mentioned. I'm not going to put the blame on Tua. I think there's blame on both sides, and I think what Brian Flores did was probably over the top. I'm not going to deny that. But I also am not going to act like Brian Flores was terrible. I mean, he had a rebuilding roster, and they went 500 in his last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I definitely think that rewriting Brian Flores to be a bad coach, that's ridiculous. You can't do that. The results tell you that that is not the case. The reason I'm not totally comfortable having like a strong take on this is there isn't reporting, right? Like we know that Brian Flores has a reputation for being a hard ass, but we don't know exactly what that personal dynamic was like between him and Tua. And there's a big difference between holding Tua accountable, and we all know nobody perceives reality, their own experience exactly as it is, right? Maybe he said something to Tua that was, that play is on you. You have to be better. And maybe he didn't say it very nicely, but whatever. Maybe it was a justified criticism. Tua heard that as, you suck, I don't believe in you. But maybe he actually did say that to Tua. Maybe he was telling Tua, because there are people who legitimately think that is a motivator to say, you suck, that is going to drive you to greatness. And I fundamentally disagree with that motivation style. Not to say that, right, I have ever experienced anything close to the NFL, okay? But I played a lot of tennis in my life. I had a lot of different coaches, and I've had a coach who was just an absolute dick. And it sucks. It doesn't make you better. It's discouraging. And yes, there are people who respond to that, but I don't think the expectation should be, oh yeah, if somebody's shitting on you all day, you just, pick your chin up and say, all right, I'm going to be great. Like, it's good to have people who believe in you. And I do think Mike McDaniel does that. Maybe he believes in him a little too much. I can see that perspective as well. It's just a bit murky to me with the whole Flores thing, which is where, like, we just don't know. It's an interaction between two people. I don't think we know enough to speak on the specifics.
Outside of the Tua factor, what else do you think is going wrong with Miami? Or do you think that's the biggest overarching question for their team is, we paid this quarterback a lot of money and we don't know if he's that guy yet?
Tua is going to be the biggest determinant on this team. Last thing real quick on this Flores thing. I don't think that ever works. I'd be pissed if a guy coached me like that. Like, if you're shit, I would not want to play for a coach like that. I think there's a fine line between being critical of a guy playing football or playing whatever sport, being critical and trying to grow from that, from directly shitting on a player. That would enrage me. That would infuriate me. You need to preach confidence and belief into your guy. Even if you, as a coach, are lying to them. Even if you don't. If you got Zach Wilson as your QB, you got to tell Zach every day, I believe in you, Zach. You can win this next football game, even if you're lying through your teeth, man. That is never a coaching style that's going to work.
I was sitting at that screen. I was watching, rooting for Zach.
You got to be delusional, man.
You have to instill belief, but you also have to be honest, right? And honesty doesn't look like saying, I don't think you're very good. It looks like saying, here's where you need to improve. This specific thing was on you. That's the balance that you have to strike as a coach, always.
Ultimately, it's really good that Flores was fired, because the Dolphins now have a genius offensive head coach. Tua has had some great seasons. Tua got paid, and I don't think Tua would have gotten paid if Flores was the head coach. And Flores wasn't perfect because he wanted Deshaun Watson, and we all know how that turned out for the Browns.
Yeah.
But this is just I have this question, though, because I don't know if I'm the only one that feels this way. Tua's first 2 seasons in the NFL I thought were all right, given the supporting system around him. But even then, he didn't overwhelm me with anything that I thought, he could be one of the top quarterbacks in the league. The last 2 seasons with McDaniel, he has posted numbers that may reflect that he is one of those top guys. But if I'm being honest, the same question marks I had after his first 2 seasons with Flores are the same question marks I have now after 2 seasons with McDaniel. And I don't know if it seems like you guys agree with me, but I don't think I'm alone in that sentiment with the public and how they feel about Tua as well.
I completely agree. All the advanced stats and all the statistics that you can look at point to Tua being one of the best QBs in the NFL. And I want to apologize to Tua because I've consistently slandered him for a long time. I've said he's below average. Tua is an above-average quarterback. Now, I don't think he's among the elite of the elite, and I think he's uniquely limited in some of those ways that you mentioned. I think, I don't want to speak for all you guys, but it's arm talent, it's that upper echelon being able to make all the throws, it's that play extension, and it's that improvisational ability. Tua's a good quarterback, but the reason that he manufactures all of these numbers is what you're alluding to, Joel. It's because the offense is gimmicked. And I think if you're watching these games and you're giving all of this credit to Tua and not to the brilliance of the offense in its totality, you're not watching these games critically enough. It's a great offense. And this is an offense that's returning its head coach. It's returning its offensive coordinator. It's returning its QB coach. This offense maximizes Tua's skills, and it limits all of his weaknesses. That's why you hire a Mike McDaniel. That's why you're ultimately okay with letting go of. I think he's a fantastic coach. I think Brian Flores is a great coach in this league. But that team needed a guy like Mike McDaniel to do that for Tua because he is the only coach, and this is the only offense outside of maybe San Francisco that is getting this version of Tua out of him. And they gimmick this offense in a lot of great ways. Tua gets the ball out quickly. He is one of the most accurate throwers of the football in the NFL, and he gets the ball to the weapons in space. But that's also because there's skill talent everywhere. It's the fastest offense in football. He's got a great running game with Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane. He's got great receiving talent in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and they're adding in Jonnu Smith this year. So I think it's the attribution error that pisses us all off, right? When people want to give all of the offensive credit to Tua, when that's just simply not the case. It is the Voltron of this offense. It is the coaching, it is the talent, and it is in Tua doing his job at a high level, but he's not an elevator. I think we can say that, and that is where I think when we get into the nuanced conversations of the quarterback position, that's where I would put Tua. He's in this Purdy, Mayfield, I guess Kirk range of quarterbacks where I don't
2020 Tannehill.
Yeah, he's not elevating the talent around him. And so that's where we can get into these conversations where I think he's just put into places that he doesn't belong. If you want my opinion on him as a QB, the best comp I can give you, I think he's Chad Pennington, man. I think at his best, he's going to be on time, he's going to be accurate, he's going to make the right decisions, he's going to complete a high percentage of his balls, and he can protect the football. But when you need him to go above and beyond and make the superhuman plays that win you crucial football games like you're talking about, Joel, he just can't do it. Mahomes is going to do it for you and that's when it gets problematic. Look at the AFC, guys. Would y'all put Tua as a top 7 quarterback in the AFC? Because that's who he's battling. He is battling the Mahomes, the Allens, the Lamars, the Joe Burrows, the Justin Herberts, the Trevor Lawrences. I've already named 7.
C.J. Strouds.
C.J. Strouds. You can keep going. That's the issue of paying a Tua because it's going to handcuff the rest of your roster when you need to be able to pay the rest of your roster to compete with these elite quarterbacks, and you just can't. That's the issue with paying Tua. I wouldn't have paid Tua if I'm keeping it a buck with you guys. I would have gone and I would have maybe gotten Michael Penix. I would have gotten one of these younger QBs. It sucks because he produced like one of the best QBs in the NFL, but we can say with our eyes that we don't think he is, man. It's a dilemma. It's a really tough dilemma and dynamic here in Miami because you don't want to lose the guy that helped make your offense great, but you also try to isolate the factors and say he's not the sole reason that this offense is great, man. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. This conversation isn't going anywhere. Tua's likely going to trot out another great offense this year because of all the great pieces. Mm-hmm. The Dolphins are going to probably win. I have them winning 10 games, finishing third in this division. I just think they're going to have a worse division record than New York, and so New York's going to win the tiebreaker. This conversation isn't going anywhere, man. We might have this for the next 2 to 3 years under this contract because he's going to continue to be successful, as are the Dolphins.
Yeah, I am very much aligned with you guys. I would not have paid Tua, and I just think you have to look at the track record against high-level competition because, as you guys said, like, nobody has been put in better position to succeed. Brock Purdy, you can argue, but this is literally the fastest offense I've ever seen. I mean, those are the two best offensive minds in football, Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel. This was the most effective rushing attack in football, number 1 in touchdowns, number 1 in yards per attempt on the ground. It's ridiculous, but Joel, you mentioned the Dolphins' success against playoff teams in the last 2 years, their complete lack of success. Just last year, they went 1-6 versus playoff teams. They averaged 16 points per game. And in every one of those matchups, man, against the Bills twice, against the Chiefs twice, Tua comes up completely and obviously short. And it is absolutely his limitations as an arm talent, right? The timing is great. The accuracy is very good. But the ability to make those high-level throws, those high degree of difficulty throws into tight windows with velocity, it's not there. He's got one of the weaker arms in football. And it's the complete lack of the ability to create out of structure when things break down, which, guess what? Against great defenses, when opposite you, great quarterbacks are putting the pressure on you to continue to rack up points, those things happen. You have to be great off schedule to be a great quarterback in today's NFL. Tua's not close. Tua's bad off schedule. And Logan, you threw out some comps. Joel, you threw out 2020 Ryan Tannehill. I mean, we were talking about Old Breeze earlier. It doesn't feel that dissimilar to Old Breeze for me, where he can execute on time. I'm talking about really Old Breeze. But there's obvious arm limitations. There's obvious mobility, creativity limitations. And that just holds you back, man. You could put up pretty regular season numbers, but in those 7 games against playoff teams, Tua was 8 touchdowns, 7 picks. The team offense was brutal. That being said, I still think they'll be a very good regular season offense because they have all this talent, because it is only in those specific matchups that Tua gets exposed, and because McDaniel's a genius. They do lose some talent in the line. They lose Connor Williams. They lose Robert Hunt, so I think they take a bit of a step back there. But I also think this defense should improve. And Joel, you were asking if we had any concerns about this team other than just Tua. The other concern last year was the defense, because I thought in a lot of those matchups against great teams, the defense very much struggled as well. And you lose a couple of great players, Christian Wilkins, Andrew Van Ginkel. Those are massive losses. But you also upgrade some spots. You replace Deshaun Elliott with Poyer. I don't know that that's a huge upgrade, but you replace Xavier Howard with Kendall Fuller. That's a good move. You add Calais Campbell. So there are studs on this defense. There's no question. Campbell, Bradley Chubb, Javon Holland, Jalen Ramsey, like those are real high impact talents. I do think they still have some weaknesses around those guys, though. I don't like their inside linebackers. I don't like their nose tackle situation. So I think the defense should be a bit better this year, but it was very mediocre last year. And then I look at the schedule. It's not easy for the Dolphins, because it's not just that your division is better now with the Jets hopefully healthy. You play the NFC West, you play the Browns, you play the Texans. I think they're probably too talented to miss the playoffs, though. I do have them winning 10 games and sneaking in because, again, my concerns aren't really about the regular season. Even though the schedule is tough, even though I think the offense might take a little step back from the insane place they were out last year because of the offensive line and because of the increased level of competition, it's the playoffs, man. It's Tua's issues there as a creator, as an arm talent. I don't like them in cold weather.
Yes, exactly, bro.
And that's what you're dealing with in the playoffs, right? I just think they're, to me, absolutely a tier below the Bills and the Jets in this division.
The Dolphins have to stay afloat on defense with their pass rush until Jalen Phillips can get fully healthy and Bradley Chubb. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for them because Shaq Barrett retired. So now one of the guys that you had and you brought in his depth to be a pass rusher Now he's gone. I think that's going to be the biggest challenge that they're going to have to maneuver early on in the season. They lost Vic Fangio, but you can argue Vic Fangio didn't do all that much for them. It's weird. It's because the Dolphins have a very talented roster, but they also have some key holes. Like, I think their nickel is pretty bad. You're counting on Kader Kohu or Nick Needham, and I don't think they've been very good, so they have a spot that can be picked on the defense. Their pass rush is probably going to lack a lot of juice very early on. Then you look at the offensive line. If Teron Armstead gets injured for 4 or 5 weeks, the offensive line turns into one of the worst units in the NFL. But this offense as a whole is constructed like a Madden roster when you're using like a 70 overall quarterback. You have 2 wide receivers that are like 98, 99 speed. Your running backs are all 96 plus speed. There's just so much juice within this offense that they're able to really cloud what you're going to do to defenses. You're able to hide and disguise what you want to do. And Mike McDaniel has already added another tinker in this offense with the motions that he's using with these tight ends. He's now kind of bending the rules a little bit. And the tight ends they look like they're going into a false start. They look like they're jumping, but they're not. And that's another thing that has defenses off guard a little bit. And that's why I'm so high on Mike McDaniel. With the Tua thing, we've talked a lot about Tua, and this isn't going to be entirely negative about him. But I saw Daniel Jones the other day in training camp versus the Jets in joint practice.
Don't do this. Joel, don't do this.
It's coming, buddy, whether you like it or not.
Daniel Jones was asked, how did the team perform? And he said they executed well. He thought they did their job. Malik Neighbors was like, man, we got our ass kicked. Like, we were terrible. And I was like, there's a difference between somebody whose expectations are up here and somebody whose expectations are here. Daniel Jones is a bare minimum type of guy. Malik Neighbors obviously wants to get more out of whatever the offense had in store that day. I look at the Dolphins, and this interview that Tua recently had, I know it got the main headline of it was Brian Flores, but when he talked about critics of him, he said, it's always something new. They're always trying to find something new. They say, I can't do that. Well, I did that, and I do this, and I do that, and I do that. And I thought there's really a lack of self-awareness there for him to say, you know what, I'm doing these things fine, and I'm proving these doubters wrong, but, haters are going to hate. Instead of you saying, you know what, I play like shit against good competition. And a better answer, I know you can't be a perfect PR machine, but a better answer for me, at least I think Joe Burrow, the Josh Allens, the Lamar Jacksons of the world, what they would say is, if we're not winning important games, it doesn't matter. If we're not winning in the playoffs, if we're not winning when we need to win, it doesn't matter. Until we win in those spots, that's when I can get the credit I deserve. But Tua's already like, I want my credit, and these criticisms are unfair even when I prove them wrong. But it's like, the criticism is, what can you do when the offense isn't completely manufactured for you and you need to make those plays? And his answer kind of told me that he still doesn't have that accountability for himself in those games and in those moments to perform at the highest level.
And traditionally, the best answer always in those situations for any quarterback is, it's on me. Even if it's not your fault fundamentally. Josh Allen, every game they lose, even if it's on the defense, I got to play better. I got to do better. I got to will this team to victory. I'm the team's leader. Also, with Tua's criticisms, normally when you have you're a polarizing guy or you have a lot of critics or something like that, let's chalk up half of the haters to just being haters. They don't like Tua. They don't like the Dolphins. They've never liked Tua. They're never going to change their mind on them. Okay, well, then normally the other half is there's some validity to it. There's merit. There's something there that you can take away and maybe learn from. I mean, it's hard, with self-awareness with anybody. Like, it's hard to, see out of yourself sometimes. But I do think it's a good criticism, man. It's like, I don't know. I mean, if I had played that football game against Kansas City, I'm going back and I'm saying, I sucked in that. We got to be better next year. That one's on me. I got to come back and, like you said, Joel, we got to win the important football games. What important football game has Tua won in his career? Has he won one?
No. To me, they've improved on the margins. Hopefully we can see Odell healthy, right? He'd be a fun receiver to see in this offense. They haven't solved their fundamental issues. So to me, they still scream first-round exit, and they scream bad first-round exit. They scream pretty embarrassing first-round exit like last year. And I can see the hype train developing again. I mean, we all heard the Tua MVP talk. We heard Tua top 5. We heard Tua's the best quarterback in this division, man. I could see it happening again. But when it comes down to winning time, when the money's on the table, man, I'm not betting on the Miami Dolphins.
Well, I mean, dude, last year we were still hearing against the Chiefs. Well, they dropped 62 points on the Broncos. I don't care, man. That's the Denver Broncos.
70.
What is that?
Let's give them respect. It was
70. Hey, damn,
that was crazy.
Did they really?
They hung 70.
That is kind of ridiculous. But y'all are talking about week 4, man. And the most damning thing to me, too, it's not only just y'all are talking about the playoff competition. It is the cold weather football games.
Yes,
when we're looking at this regular season schedule, you got Seattle. You're going to Seattle. You're traveling to New England. You're traveling to Buffalo. You're traveling to Green Bay. And in the last 2 games of the regular season that could be very important, you're traveling to Cleveland and to New York. Guys, I expect them basically to lose every cold weather football game they play in. And that's problematic for the regular season when you're traveling like that. It's also problematic, more importantly, when you have to play playoff games. That's the most important football that you're playing. Yeah. All of them are going to be cold.
So what do you guys think? Do you think they make the playoffs?
No. I think I don't see 3 teams in a division making the playoffs. The AFC East I know is very talented, but I look at the AFC North and they got the Bengals, the Ravens,
for sure,
the Browns. There's just other teams and other divisions that are really damn good. And I feel, because I have the Jets winning the division, I feel the Bills or the Dolphins will miss the playoffs. One of those two.
Not going to be the Bills.
I'm picking, am I really going to pick Josh Allen to miss the playoffs? I know the schedule is so tough, but at first, I was actually getting ready to make a take and say the Bills are missing the playoffs. But then I thought to myself, am I really picking Josh Allen to miss the playoffs? And I was like, no, I think it's going to be the Dolphins. I think they can have like a 9-8 finish and miss it.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my standings right now. I've got one of the Texans, the Browns, or the Dolphins is going to miss the playoffs, I think, for me. Because
Logan has the Jags winning the AFC South.
Okay.
Interesting.
And I have the Bengals completely missing out on the party. I think I'm going to have them win I'm thinking probably about 8 or 7 games right now.
Spoilers.
Sorry to spoil it, but there is going to be a big team, either the Texans, the Browns, or the Dolphins. Somebody unexpected for me is going to miss the playoffs.
Oh, I love that the Steelers aren't even on the bubble.
So we're going second, bro. You go ahead.
Oh, I love it.
I love it. Go ahead. We'll do it again. We'll do it again.
We will see either, in my opinion, the AFC North or the AFC East get 3 teams. I think
concur.
Both divisions are that good. I think the Dolphins are a bit more talented overall than the AFC bubble teams that I'm considering, which I won't get too into the details with right now. But there's
no
a lot of
Chargers
talent on
love.
this team. Chargers are in the conversation. They're very much in the conversation.
I think
I
the
have
Raiders
them making
are
the
gonna be
party.
better than the Chargers this year.
A Raiders better than Chargers is a bit crazy to me.
All right.
Listen, nothing's official yet. All right, we still have weeks to the season. We haven't done our AFC West. We haven't done our AFC North yet. But I think that I'm going to have the Dolphins as my last playoff team in with 10 wins. But I thought about going 9-8 for them. All right, let's talk about the team that is in a totally different world than everybody else that we've talked about. The New England Patriots, who I think a lot of people think might be the worst team in football this year. Joel, what are your expectations for them?
Man, I love that the Patriots suck now. It gives every other team in the division a chance to win it now.
Poetic.
The post-Brady years. I actually kind of like the Patriots to over-exceed a little bit expectations. Not to be a in-the-hunt team or anything, but, if you think they're going to win 3 games, I think they're going to win 6. I think they'll be a little bit more competitive than people think. And I do think Drake Maye should start early on, even though I do love Jacoby Brissett. Their defense is still going to be very awesome. Last year, they finished as one of the better defenses in football, and that was with multiple injuries along their defense. And losing Bill Belichick hurts it a little bit, but Gerard Mayo was a defensive assistant, so he knew what they were doing back there. And I think what makes their defense so great is the hybrids at safeties that they employ, whether it's Jabril Peppers or Kyle Duggar, Marte Marte, I'm forgetting his last name, the rookie they had last year. They just are able to do so many different things, and are able to play in big nickel, which is so important, and be able to stop the run and be great against the pass. The offense is the big question mark. I think in an ideal scenario, if I were a Patriots fan at least, I want the offense at some point in the season to be Drake Maye, Ramondre, Javon Baker, Jalen Polk, and Pop Douglas. Those are the guys that you lean on the most on offense, because it means that your young players have developed into something that is serviceable, much like the Green Bay Packers. Last year, Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi really hampered this offense. Not only did they turn the ball over at an insanely high rate, but they offered virtually zero room for explosive plays within the offense. And even if Drake Maye struggles and throws interceptions, Mac Jones did it last year. Bailey Zappi did it last year. The difference with Drake Maye is that he's going to be able to throw 40 balls down the field for big-time gains and get some explosive plays, and that's going to spark the offense and score more points, hopefully. So I actually like the direction the Patriots are going into. I love the Matt Judon trade, a 33-year-old pass rusher who you traded for a third-round pick to rebuild this team. I like the direction they're heading into, but the questionable part of this team is obviously the offensive personnel, the offensive line, and how good is Gerard Mayo going to be as a head coach? We still don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, and there's only so much a good defense can make up for. I like their secondary. Christian Gonzalez was injured last year, too. We're finally going to get hopefully a full season from him. I like their defensive front. I'm not in love with the pass rush. I do think I'm expecting this defense to be above average at best. I think that they are going to suffer a little bit with the Judon injury. And I think the Patriots are going to stink, man. I have them winning. Well, no, I'm saying, they lost Judon, so it's done. I think they're going to go 4-13. I think the offense is going to stink. This is a poor offensive line. They have no weapons at their disposal. There is a lack of an elite running game. I think Stevenson and Gibson should be a solid tandem, but they're not going to carry the offense. So the big question to me about this season is basically just, what does Drake Maye look like? I'm a big fan of Drake Maye. I love how he goes through his progressions and reads the field. That's the biggest thing to me with young quarterbacks. Can they quickly get through their reads? Can they read a defense? I trust Drake to do that. He's going to make mistakes, obviously. Maye is a little reckless. I think there's a little mechanical refinement he needs. Needs to be a little bit more accurate. Can airmail throws a little bit. Can be off target. But he's got a big and live arm. I love his ability to scramble and use his legs. That is huge. And he's got that gunslinger, playmaker, improvisational trait that you see among the big dogs. Like, he's willing to try shit. And so I think Drake Maye is a franchise guy. I'm going to be disappointed if Drake Maye is not eventually a top 10 QB in this league. And I think you're looking at two quarterbacks in the top of this draft that are big-time franchise guys. If Caleb is a top 3 quarterback eventually, if he has that top 3 QB potential, I think Drake Maye has top 5 QB potential. If Caleb's comp is Patrick Mahomes, Drake Maye's comp to me is Josh Allen. Like, I completely buy into the hype with Drake Maye. I think they have walked into their next franchise guy. And so really, I don't think the benchmark for this team should be how many games do they win, how close are they to the playoffs. It should be how much better does Drake Maye get from week 1 to week 18. And who are the guys around him that complement him, right? Is this a running back duo that works? Are there any staples on the offensive line that we really buy into? Are there any home run hitters, like you're talking about, Joel, in the receiving core that we really like and buy to alongside him? Everything about this team should be about elevating him and trying to see what you got in this kid. Man, dude, if they win six games, I think you should hang a banner, man. I think we're throwing a parade.
I think the Patriots are going to be the best 3-win team that we've seen in a long time.
Wow.
I love Drake Maye. I am all in on Drake Maye. I think he absolutely should have gone second. I think he is an elite arm talent. I think he is a great improviser. And as you say, Logan, I think that he can absolutely dissect defenses more surgically. I think that he has it all. And, if not for Caleb, I think he would have been a perfectly good number 1 prospect in a class. You drop him the year before, he goes number 1 in that class. He's the best prospect in that class. But he's damn near the only thing I believe in about this team, and he might not even start right away. He will start at some point. I fully believe in that. And Jacoby's fine, right? That would just be the most Patriot shit ever to start Jacoby Brissett over your super talented young quarterback. That would be so Belichick, because Belichick always is so conservative with that stuff offensively. But around him, I mean, it's a disaster. Their line is awful. Their receiving core is by far the worst in football. I think it's concerning how excited Pats fans get about Pop Douglas. I think that tells you a lot about the state of the offense overall. Like, it's bad, man. It is bad. And I do think their defense will be solid. The thing is, I do believe that losing Belichick's mind is going to limit the defense's ability to excel no matter what, year after year, right? Because I think that they have good talent on the defense right now. I don't think it's elite talent. I just don't think it ever mattered with Bill. Like, he's such a genius, and he fell behind things offensively and as a GM at the end, and so everybody started to talk about Belichick's falling off. He never stopped being arguably the best defensive coach in football. And I still think that the Patriots benefited from that value. It's not that I don't like Mayo. I just don't think he's Bill Belichick defensively. And the reason I say they're going to be the best 3-win team ever is because I do think good rookie quarterback, even in a terrible situation, and that's why it's like any comparison between him and Caleb this year is going to be unfair. I do think Caleb is better. I do think he's more talented. I think he is going to be one of the faces of this league. I'm not quite that high on Drake. He also has 3 receivers who run circles around anybody on the Pats. His line has been invested in much more, and I do think is now much better than the Pats. He's been put in a much better position to succeed. Drake Maye has been dropped in offensive hell. And so the quarterback can't save the offense, even though I think he'll be good. The defense, I think, will be fine, but as Logan says, a solid defense can only do so much for you, especially when this is your schedule. This is the toughest schedule in football. I'm just going to read off every single game, okay? At the Bengals, Seahawks, at the Jets, at the Niners, Dolphins, Texans, probably all playoff teams, at Jaguars, arguably a playoff team. Jaguars, I should say. People don't like when you say Jaguars. Makes sense. It's not written that way. I don't know why I say it that way. Jets, at Titans, easiest game of the year, at Bears, Rams, at Dolphins, Colts, at Cardinals, at Bills, Chargers, Bills. They will not be favored in a game once this entire year.
Yeah.
Legitimately, that is ridiculous, bro. So that's just where I'm like, where are the 6 wins, man? They're going to have to beat some good teams to get to 6 wins.
No, you're right. It's going to be a lot of upsets. The 2 teams that you mentioned just now that I think is like, okay, they can win those were the Titans and the Cardinals. I'm like, okay, they can win those games. I agree. Listen, I agree.
And they're on the road for both those, which is why I
game.
don't think they'll be favored. Because I think those will be, certainly more even, but tough to win games on the road.
I don't know if it'll play out like this. I have the Patriots starting out 2-0. I have them starting out 3-2, and then the bottom just falls out, man.
Wait. I'm sorry. How many
them
games
beating
do you
the
have them
Bengals.
winning overall?
4.
Oh my God!
Do you have them beating the Bengals?
He must.
I have them beating the Bengals week
on the
1.
road week 1. Oh my God!
I think it's the upset of week 1, and then I have them beating Seattle, and then
the fact that you picked the Bengals to win like 7-8 games was alarming, because there are 7-8 games that they should absolutely win. They faced the Patriots, the Titans, the Commanders, the Panthers, the Giants, and I'm forgetting some other teams they faced in there. I think they faced the Cardinals as well.
That's a little light. That's a little light.
They faced such one of the lightest schedules in the league, and are you just not a Joe Burrow guy?
No, Carson talked. It was actually on your show, Joel. Carson kind of talked me into the Bengals skid this season.
I'm worried about the Bengals too. They're not going to win 7 games though.
Playing the North,
I don't think.
Playing everybody in the North twice, I think is brutal. They're just going to get beat up. And then, dude, I looked in the advanced stats. Maybe they're a little better next year. They were allowing like 7.1 air yard or average yards per passing attempt, which was by far the worst in the league.
Yeah.
I mean,
bad last year.
If they have that kind of output I don't care what Joe Burrow's doing in the air, man. That team is, and then it's just like little shit. Like, I'm worried about the O-line. I'm worried about Joe getting hit again. If Joe goes down again, the Bengals are going to suck. There's a lot of red flags I have with Cincy.
They weren't playing well with Joe last year, man.
You know what? I will say that the Bengals, they have loads of question marks. I think almost every position group, there's a question mark within them. Their secondary, to me, is very underrated. Dax Hill has moved from safety to corner, and he's all but locked up the second corner spot to opposite of Cam Taylor-Britt with Hilton playing as the nickel. I think Dax Hill has a pretty good season, and their secondary play, just getting veterans, I think that'll be much better. The thing is, though, is that if they had a tougher schedule, I would say, they're in danger, but their schedule is so light that I think they can still win 10 to 11 games and even have a chance to win the AFC North just off the strength of Joe Burrow with the offense. Hopefully Jamar Chase comes back and facing one of the easiest schedules in the league.
Well, I can definitely – the AFC North is so freaking weird, man. Everybody's going to be within 4 games of one another.
Yeah.
Also, I know everybody – the Steelers are everybody's punching bag every year to finish as the bottom. If there's going to be a year, I understand it being this season just because of the quarterback question.
Bro.
But it's such a dogfight. And like I said, health is going to determine. Everybody wants to make their predictions for the AFC North. For some reason, I don't know why they made the schedules like this year. All of the AFC North games are basically from the start of November to early January. Health is going to be a huge factor for who wins that division because it's basically all the division games in that stretch.
Oh, that's going to be fun. Everybody a little beat up in the snow, playing some vintage AFC North football. I'm worried about the Bengals, but I don't know if there's a team under 500 in that division. It's such a good division. It's ridiculous.
If there's one, it's going to be the Steelers.
I'll hold you to it.
I think it might be the Bengals.
But I've been saying that for the last 2 years now with the Steelers. I just don't know how they
keep winning. You should have
winning.
been right. You should have been right. Point differential would say that you should have been right.
Oh, no.
Offense would say that you should have been right.
Point differential says those are 2 of the worst 10-win teams.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. But the terrible towels just won't give up, man. Tomlin has other plans. All right, Joel, thank you for coming on, man. A little bit of AFC North preview at the end there, guys, so stay tuned for that episode coming in hot. Unfortunately, Joel will not be on that one, but he will be on the Pick a Side podcast where we have all of our friends over there. Joel himself, Dells, Riv, Drew, the boys. We'll even shout out John Tortorelli here, longtime friend of the show. So check out Pick a Side always. Check out the full shows. So entertaining. Awesome stuff. Check them out on TikTok. And check out the Joel Moran show. Check out all of the individual shows that they have over there as well. We were on Riv Academy last week, Riv's show, so go ahead and check that out. Really, really great guys, really great content. So everybody, if you're not already following them, get your shit together, follow them, lock in for football season. Anything else you want to plug? Anything else you want to say before we let you go, Joel?
Now, you did an amazing job of doing it. I want to thank you guys for having me on for the AFC East preview. We talked about a lot of great things, and we had some Tua slander in there, and I always love those. I'm coming in with a tux when those are on the show. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you, Joel.
Of course, man. You got to talk about your Jets and you got to talk about Tua in one show. We're bringing you in to throw your fastball. We're bringing you in to do your best stuff. If you guys want more of our content, you can find all of our full shows across our YouTube channel. You can also find the trivia episodes that we've done throughout the summer. As we mentioned, we had the Pick a Side guys on. We've had a bunch of fun guests on. So NFL preview stuff, trivia, NBA rankings, it's all there. We also have video essays, mostly from the NBA season at this point, but I have a historical one that should be coming out soon that I'm very excited about, worked very hard on. It's going to be long, but lock in. I think it's going to be good. And I want to do more of those throughout the NBA offseason as well. You can follow us across social, TikTok, Instagram, at NerdSesh, Twitter, at Nerd_Sesh, to see all the short-form trivia content we do, to see graphics of lists that we make on the show, all of our predictions, clips from the show. That's across social. You can check out our merch at thevolume.com, and you can join our Discord. The link to that is at the link tree across our social media bio. Finally, if you want to watch me play some NCAA Football 25, follow us on Twitch, Nerd_Sesh. We have a good time there. We don't win a lot of games, but we have a good time and we're building something. So, with that, as always, appreciate you guys. One last shout out to Joel. One last shout out to Pick a Side. Go check them out 100%. If you don't, I will be pissed. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was NerdSesh.